Point number 2 says, the metal image, and that's the metal image of Daniel chapter 2, showed the kingdoms which reigned over national Israel during the Sinai Covenant. All right? The metal image showed the kingdoms which reigned over national Israel during the Sinai Covenant. Our text there are Daniel chapter 2 verse 36 to 40 and Luke chapter 2 verse 1. Now, for the sake of being brief, because I do not intend to read through the entire chapter of Daniel chapter 2. You can do that at your own leisure and at your own pleasure. But I want to deal with the substantive points of this prophecy. In summary, this was a dream given to a king, and so we will look at the details of the dream in terms of its interpretation. Okay, so as I said, maybe if you go to the image, this was what the dream showed. It showed a metal statue having the head of gold, having the breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass or bronze, the legs of iron, and then the feet were of iron and clay. And then it was seen that this stone was cut out, and the stone smashed the image at its feet, and the image became the chaff, or it was ground to pieces, ground to dust. Good. Now Daniel, the prophet in the time when this king had this dream, was called in to interpret the dream. Okay, so Daniel had to pray and seek the understanding, and the dream was revealed to Daniel, and Daniel was able to interpret the dream. So we're going to look at the interpretation that Daniel gave. Okay, so we cut out a lot of time by doing that. Okay, so just to look at the interpretation that Daniel gave. So we're going to go to verse 36 of Daniel chapter 2. We are already in Daniel chapter 2, understanding that the vision was for the last days, and the last days speak here of Israel's last days. The big mistake that the modern church makes with these time references is that they always place them out of context, or they always look at them or understand them out of their context. So when the modern church reads the latter days, they always think it means the latter days of us in the 21st century. Okay? But the Bible was not written in the 21st century. And as Paul says, the scriptures were not written to Gentiles. The scripture was written to natural Sinai Covenant Israel. Good? So therefore, the latter days was for national Sinai Covenant Israel. Good? So let's go to verse 36, where Daniel is interpreting this vision or this dream. It says there, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, and we're talking here about King Nebuchadnezzar, who was a Chaldean, right? And the Chaldeans ruled the Babylonian Empire, okay? At that time, the superpower was Babylon, right? They conquered many of the nations in that area of the world, okay? But they were not by no means conquered all nations in all the world, okay? But significantly, they ruled over that area of the world in which Jerusalem and which Judea and Israel was located. And so when they expanded their kingdom and they conquered Jerusalem, they conquered Judea, they conquered Israel, then the Holy Land came under the rule of Babylon. Good? So, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory, wherever the children of men dwell, and the beast of the field and the fowls of heaven has he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. Okay? So we understand that the head of gold represented Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon. Good? And then it says, after you, your kingdom, which is Babylon, shall arise another kingdom. Again, so we understand that these metals represents kingdoms and successive kingdoms, right? So after Babylon, the next kingdom was the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. Good? It says there, the kingdom which will arise after you will be inferior to you, okay? And we know that is the kingdom of the Medes and Persians, which conquered the empire of Babylon, even though the Medes and Persians, as it says there, were militarily inferior to the Babylonian armies and so on, but through the providence of God and so on and so forth, they were able to conquer Babylon, right? And so the Medes and the Persians now ruled that empire, which was Babylon, and it was termed that they ruled the world. But most importantly, the Medes and Persians were now the ones who were now ruling over the Holy Land. Okay? The significance of these kingdoms in this statue was that all of them ruled over the Holy Land. That was the only thing that's significant about these four kingdoms, right? They ruled over the Holy Land. Jerusalem, Israel, Judea, and so on, right? So then it says, another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear over all the world. So after the Medes and Persians came the Macedonian Empire, which was ruled by the Greeks. So the Macedonian Empire expanded now, and it overthrew the Medes and the Persians. And in process of doing that, Jerusalem, Israel, Judea fell under the Macedonian Empire. Good? So you see, all of these empires were empires that ruled over Israel. Good? Then it says in verse 40, the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, and for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Okay, so the fourth kingdom now, there was the kingdom, the world empire, the old world empire, which followed after the Macedonian Empire, and that was Rome. Okay, so Rome expanded. Rome fought with the Macedonian empires for years, hundreds of years. These were not yesterday and today things. It was things that happened over periods of hundreds of years. Eventually, though, the Romans succeeded in putting down the Macedonian Empire, and Rome ruled that part of the world. But most importantly, again, the Holy Land fell under Rome's authority. Good? So that is what the statue is showing. Good? The traditional understanding also, for the most part, I believe, most denominations have this understanding also, that the four metals in the statue are the four successive kingdoms of the Chaldees or the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians, then the Greeks and the Macedonians, then the Romans. Those four empires which reigned over Israel. That's the important thing. Good? So now, when we look at Luke chapter 2 verse 1, okay, Luke chapter 2 verse 1, it tells us there, Luke chapter 2 verse 1, it tells us there, and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. Okay? All the world should be taxed. Okay? And the context of this is the birth of Jesus Christ. Okay? Look at verse 4. It says there, and Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. So Mary at this time was pregnant with the baby Jesus. So look which empire was reigning at that time. From the time you see the word Caesar, you know it's the Roman Empire. So at the time Jesus was born, the Roman Empire was reigning over Israel. Or Israel was under the rule of Rome, which means they were in the legs of iron. Good? The legs of iron had already begun. Good? And we have Jesus coming into the world during that time. Now, I'm going to say that not only did Jesus come in during the legs of iron, let's come back to the picture. I'm saying Jesus was born in the feet of iron and clay. All right? And we're going to see that in point number 3 when I come back.